But I knew that if I didn't say it, that I would do it. And I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
Meghan Markle once left British history, but this time the tables have turned. She was not just leaving, she was kicked out. The news has left the world with questions. Was she forced to leave because of her past? Did she uncover Saudi secrets like she did in Britain? Join us as we uncover the truth behind this shocking decision. The arrival that shook Riyadh. It has been several years since Meghan Markle left the British royal family with her husband after a period of serious controversy. Their departure followed a public interview in which they spoke about tension inside the royal household. They mentioned feeling unsupported and emotionally distressed. Those statements created deep division. Some people believed them. Others strongly disagreed. The royal family did not respond in detail, but the distance between both sides became clear. Since then, Meghan has remained a powerful and debated public figure. Supporters see her as brave and honest. Critics believe she damaged royal tradition. Her interview with Oprah Winfrey reached millions of viewers around the world. Later projects, including documentaries and public talks, continued to keep her in the spotlight. Whether praised or criticized, her name still carries influence. Saudi Arabia is also a monarchy. It is led by a royal family with strong control over public life and media. In recent years, the country has introduced some reforms, especially allowing women to drive and take larger roles in public spaces. However, political speech and criticism of authority remain sensitive topics. Public image is carefully protected. High-level decisions are made quietly. Because of this, any visit from a global figure connected to royal controversy can raise concern. Meghan is known for speaking openly about power, fairness, and emotional well-being. In some countries, this is seen as positive leadership. In others, it can be viewed as challenging authority. When reports quietly confirmed that Meghan had traveled to Saudi Arabia, observers were surprised. There was no major public announcement, no official joint statement, no large diplomatic ceremony. For someone connected to the British royal family, even after stepping away, this kind of quiet arrival was unusual. Sources suggested the visit involved discussions about culture and women's programs. That alone was not shocking. But experts quickly pointed out the tension between her public image and the strict structure of Saudi leadership. Some reform-minded leaders might welcome international dialogue. Others may fear global media attention. Soon after her arrival, news spread that she had been instructed to leave the country before sunrise. The order reportedly came from a senior Saudi prince. No public reason was given. There were no official accusations, only a direct decision. This kind of sudden order is rare in diplomatic settings. Normally, disagreements are handled privately without visible action. The speed of this decision raised questions. Did some leaders disagree about inviting her? Did her past statements about royal life create discomfort? Was her global media reach seen as a risk? Inside a monarchy, image and stability are extremely important. Leaders avoid situations that could bring unwanted headlines. Meghan's history with the British royal family made her both influential and controversial. That combination can create pressure. Neither side explained what truly happened. Silence followed. In royal systems, silence often means sensitivity. This situation highlights something larger. When a public figure known for challenging one royal institution enters another traditional monarchy, tension can grow quickly. Even without open conflict, symbolic meaning matters. So what really changed in those few hours? Why was the decision made so fast? What happened inside the palace that forced her sudden departure? How it all began. The invitation. Weeks before the sudden departure, a quiet invitation had already set everything in motion. It did not come through public channels. It was not announced by a government office. It arrived through private networks connected to cultural and charitable circles in the Middle East. The message was clear and direct. A senior Saudi prince wanted Meghan Markle to attend a private cultural delegation in Riyadh. Since leaving royal duty, Meghan had been building a new public identity. She signed major media agreements for documentaries and audio projects. She spoke about mental health, women's leadership, and fairness in institutions. She supported charities focused on girls' education and community welfare. Public speaking events, panel discussions, and carefully chosen partnerships became part of her work. She was no longer acting as a working royal, but she still carried global attention wherever she went. The invitation from Saudi Arabia focused on art, culture, and women's progress. Organizers described it as a closed-door gathering of influential figures. The goal, they said, was dialogue. The program would include museum visits, discussions with businesswomen, and meetings tied to charitable funding. It sounded respectful, it sounded positive, but it was not a normal diplomatic trip. There was no announcement from the British government, no public support from the royal household, no official embassy statement confirming cooperation. That silence mattered. When members of the royal family travel, even informally, coordination usually happens behind the scenes. In this case, there was no visible structure linking the visit to London. Observers began asking questions even before she arrived. Why would a Saudi prince invite a figure known for criticizing royal systems? Was the invitation a sign of reform and openness, or was it something else entirely? Saudi Arabia has been trying to reshape its global image in recent years. Cultural festivals, international sports deals, and investment forums have brought new attention to the kingdom. Leaders have spoken about modernization and expanded roles for women. At the same time, critics continue to point out limits on political speech and press freedom. The country balances change with strong control. Meghan's public identity sits in a delicate place within that balance. She speaks openly about fairness and personal struggle. She has described feeling silenced inside a powerful institution. For supporters of reform, that message can feel inspiring. For traditional power structures, it can feel uncomfortable. Some analysts suggested the prince behind the invitation wanted to show openness to global female leaders. Others believed internal factions may not have agreed with the decision. In royal systems, not all leaders think alike. A single invitation can create quiet disagreement. There was also the question of strategy. Meghan's global reach is large. Media attention follows her. Even without official press coverage, news of her presence spreads quickly. Did the invitation aim to benefit from that attention? Or did planners underestimate how sensitive the situation could become? Those close to Meghan described the trip as focused on culture and charity, not politics. Yet in monarchies, image and politics often overlap. A meeting meant to discuss art can still carry symbolic meaning. A private conversation about women's empowerment can still be interpreted as commentary. The quiet nature of the visit only deepened suspicion. When high-level meetings are kept out of public view, observers often assume there is more beneath the surface. By the time she boarded the flight to Riyadh, speculation had already begun. Was this a bold step toward dialogue, or was it a risky move shaped by hidden agendas? And most important of all, what was the real purpose of the invitation? Rumors that followed her in. From the moment news spread that Meghan Markle had arrived in Saudi Arabia, whispers began moving through powerful circles. They did not begin in public squares. They did not appear in official statements. They traveled quietly through palace halls, private offices, and guarded meeting rooms. In systems built on hierarchy and control, rumors can move faster than facts. Meghan carried more than luggage when she entered the kingdom. She carried a reputation. Since leaving the British royal family, many people had described her as a whistleblower. They believed she had exposed hidden tensions inside one of the world's most famous monarchies. During her televised interview, she spoke about feeling isolated. She said there were concerns raised within the royal household about how dark her unborn child's skin might be. She said she struggled with mental health and felt she was not given enough support. She described rules that limited her freedom. Those statements shook public trust in the royal system she left behind. Supporters praised her for speaking openly. Critics accused her of damaging the institution. Either way, she became known as someone willing to break silence. That image followed her everywhere. Inside Saudi Arabia, this reputation did not go unnoticed. The kingdom is also ruled by a royal family. Authority is strong. Public criticism of leadership is not common. Decisions are handled within strict lines of power. In such an environment, a figure known for challenging monarchy can create unease. Some members of the Saudi elite reportedly welcomed her presence. They viewed her as a global advocate for women's empowerment and mental health awareness. They believed dialogue with international voices could strengthen reform efforts already underway. Saudi Arabia has introduced changes in recent years, including expanded opportunities for women in public life. For reform supporters, hosting Meghan could signal openness. But other factions were said to feel differently. Conservative voices inside the royal structure may have questioned the wisdom of inviting someone labeled a whistleblower. If she had publicly criticized one royal household, could she one day criticize another? If she spoke freely about private family matters before, would she do so again? In monarchies, loyalty and image are vital. Public stability depends on controlled messaging. Even the idea that a guest might share uncomfortable observations can raise alarms. As her visit unfolded, small signs suggested tension behind closed doors. Planned meetings shifted, timetables adjusted. Some private sessions reportedly became more restricted than originally intended. These details were not dramatic on the surface, yet observers noticed the careful tone. Beyond politics, there was also the matter of influence. Meghan's global platform is powerful. Media organizations follow her movements closely. Even without direct press coverage inside the kingdom, international headlines could shape how Saudi leadership was viewed abroad. If conversations about women's rights or mental health became linked to her visit, global attention would follow. This raised deeper concerns. Did some leaders fear she might speak about private discussions later? Did they worry that her presence would invite scrutiny from Western media? Or was the tension rooted in internal disagreement about reform itself? In royal systems, power is rarely simple. Different branches of leadership can hold different views. One prince may support cultural exchange, while another may prioritize strict tradition. When such differences exist, a high-profile guest can become the center of silent struggle. Meghan's past words made her both admired and unpredictable in the eyes of some observers. She had shown that she would speak publicly if she felt wronged. She had described private pain inside a powerful family. That history created doubt. Rumors began to hint at something even more sensitive. Some insiders whispered that certain discussions during her visit touched on topics considered too delicate. No details were confirmed, no statements were released. But in controlled environments, even a rumor of discomfort can be enough to trigger action. As speculation grew, one question rose above the rest. Were powerful figures simply cautious, or were they afraid? Was Meghan seen as a partner for progress, or as a risk to stability? In a place where authority depends on careful image management, even the possibility of exposure can change everything. What secrets did Saudi power brokers want to protect? The controversial meeting that changed everything. The turning point did not happen in public. It did not unfold before cameras or reporters. It took place during a private dinner held inside a guarded royal residence in Riyadh. The invitation list was small. The setting was elegant but restrained. No official press statement described the gathering. Yet what happened inside that room would change everything. The dinner was hosted by a Saudi princess known among insiders for supporting gradual reform. She had spoken in the past about education for girls and wider participation of women in business. While her influence operated within limits, she was seen as part of a modern circle inside the kingdom. Her decision to meet Meghan privately carried meaning. The atmosphere that evening was formal. Discussions began with safe topics: culture, charity work, art, and international partnerships. These subjects were expected. They were comfortable. But as the night progressed, the tone shifted. The subject of women's rights was raised, not in a loud or dramatic way, but directly. The conversation moved toward questions of opportunity and voice. Meghan had long spoken about empowerment and equal treatment. Her public record included remarks about feeling unheard within a powerful institution. Those past words shaped how every sentence she spoke was interpreted. Then the topic of global press freedom entered the discussion. This was more sensitive. Saudi Arabia has faced international criticism regarding media restrictions and the treatment of journalists. Inside the kingdom, such matters are rarely debated openly. Even a measured exchange on the subject can carry weight. According to sources, the tone in the room grew sharper. No shouting occurred. No visible argument broke out. But phrases were exchanged that made some attendees uncomfortable. The lines between cultural dialogue and political implication began to blur. What made the evening even more complex was the question of privacy. Royal residences are known for high levels of surveillance and security monitoring. While the dinner was private, it is believed that security systems documented portions of the gathering. In tightly controlled environments, conversations are often reviewed if concerns arise. By late evening, palace officials had reportedly received summaries of the discussion. The phrase "crossed a red line" appeared in internal communications. The exact meaning of that phrase was never explained publicly. It may have referred to the discussion of media restrictions. It may have reflected discomfort with the tone of reform language, or it may have been tied to internal power disagreements. Inside monarchies, the definition of a red line is rarely clear to outsiders. It can relate to loyalty, public image, or the perception of challenge to authority. Once that line is believed to be crossed, decisions move quickly. Messages were said to move between senior advisors and royal offices before midnight. The situation was described as sensitive. Some argued that the meeting had been misunderstood. Others warned that allowing the visit to continue could create future complications. In such systems, stability is valued above all. Leaders often act early to prevent potential problems from growing. Even the risk of international headlines can influence internal choices. Meghan's history as someone who had publicly described private royal tension made the situation more delicate. By the early hours of the morning, a final decision was reached. The order was direct. Meghan was to leave the country before sunrise. No press explanation would be offered. No debate would follow. The visit would end quietly. The speed of the decision raised immediate questions among observers. Was it something she said during that dinner? Was it the symbolic meaning of who she met? Or did internal rivals use the moment to create a reason for removal? Without official clarification, speculation filled the silence. In royal environments, the truth often remains behind closed doors. What is spoken privately can carry consequences far beyond the room itself. The dinner had been described as cultural dialogue. It ended as a turning point. What exactly was said in those dimly lit rooms? What detail triggered such a firm response? What truth lay inside those forbidden conversations? The order that came at dawn. The final moment arrived before the sun touched the skyline of Riyadh. In the quiet hours before morning prayer, a message was delivered. It was brief. It carried authority. It left no space for discussion. Meghan Markle was ordered to leave Saudi Arabia immediately. There was no transition period, no scheduled meeting to resolve concern, no official explanation attached to the command. The message came directly from a senior Saudi prince. The language was formal and final. Departure was required before sunrise. Only hours earlier, her visit had appeared to be moving forward, even if tension had grown beneath the surface. Weeks of preparation had gone into planning the trip. Cultural discussions had been arranged, charitable partnerships had been outlined, private conversations had taken place. Yet one night had changed everything. Those close to the situation were stunned by the speed of the decision. In diplomatic settings, even disagreements are usually handled through negotiation. Officials often work behind the scenes to protect relationships. Abrupt removal is rare. It signals urgency. It signals risk. The British Embassy, according to insiders, was left confused. No prior warning had been shared. No official concern had been communicated through diplomatic channels. For a visit involving a figure once connected to the British royal family, This silence stood out. Inside Saudi leadership circles, silence can be strategic. When a decision is sensitive, public explanation may be avoided to prevent wider attention. Yet silence also invites speculation. Without a reason, observers create their own. The timing of the order raised serious questions. It followed the private dinner where topics such as women's rights and press freedom had surfaced. It followed reports that internal messages described the meeting as crossing a red line. The connection seemed clear, but nothing was confirmed. One theory suggested that conservative factions within the kingdom feared future headlines. Meghan's history as a whistleblower made some leaders cautious. She had spoken openly in the past about internal royal struggles. She had described private concerns that became global news. That memory lingered. Another theory pointed to internal power balance. In monarchies, different branches of leadership may hold different visions. One group may support reform and dialogue. Another may prefer stability and strict tradition. If disagreement exists, a visiting guest can become the center of that struggle. Removing the guest can restore control. There was also the matter of pride. Royal authority depends on image. If a discussion during the dinner was interpreted as challenging that authority, even indirectly, swift action might follow. Leaders often act not only to prevent conflict, but to send a message. As preparations for departure moved quietly through official channels, the city remained calm. Streets were still. Lights glowed in tall buildings. Most residents were unaware that a diplomatic incident was unfolding behind palace walls. For Meghan's advisors, the suddenness of the command felt deliberate. No appeal was offered. No conversation followed. The decision had been made at the highest level. How could a single evening undo weeks of planning? Was the meeting truly viewed as a threat, or had hidden forces been waiting for an opportunity to act? In royal systems, power is layered. Decisions often reflect more than one reason. Fear of international scrutiny may blend with internal rivalry. Concern about reputation may combine with political caution. What appears simple on the surface can hide deeper motives. The world would wake to headlines filled with confusion, but in those final hours before sunrise, the matter was already settled. The visit had ended not with ceremony but with command. Was the order truly about protecting political stability, or was it about asserting personal power within the royal hierarchy? Was the decision driven by politics, or by something far more personal? The hidden reason uncovered. As the days passed, the story slowly came into focus. Investigations, discussions with palace insiders, and careful review of events revealed what some had quietly feared all along. The sudden order for Meghan Markle to leave was not simply about etiquette or protocol. It was about power, influence, and perception. Sources described a faction within the Saudi palace that grew increasingly uneasy about her visit. Meghan had global recognition. She carried influence far beyond the kingdom. Her words, her presence, and her past as a whistleblower created concern. Officials feared that any private conversation could later be interpreted in international media. Every statement, every gesture, even a smile could be amplified to audiences around the world. The concern was not entirely unfounded. Meghan had repeatedly spoken about issues she considered important, including mental health, women's rights, and fairness within institutions. Her interviews had reached millions. They had caused controversy. In Riyadh, the palace elite realized that even a private dinner could lead to public scrutiny, which could in turn affect relationships within the royal family and political alliances abroad. Some insiders said the prince who had personally invited her was unaware of the full implications. He had intended the visit to be a quiet, cultural, and charitable engagement. But the internal warning system in the palace worked fast. Messages flew between offices. Senior figures debated the potential risks. By dawn, a consensus had been reached. Meghan must leave immediately. Other sources claimed the order did not come from the prince alone. It came from higher up. Decisions of this magnitude, they said, would not be taken lightly. They involved multiple levels of authority and required approval from the top circles of power. The prince's invitation may have been genuine, but once conservative factions perceived a threat, swift action was taken to prevent any possible fallout. Observers outside the palace tried to understand what had happened. Some believed it was a clash of cultures. Meghan represented openness, global dialogue, and outspoken commentary. The Saudi system values discretion, hierarchy, and controlled messaging. When these two worlds collided, tensions were inevitable. Yet there was more than culture at stake. Some insiders framed the situation as a political power struggle disguised as protocol. In tightly controlled monarchies, even private meetings can signal influence. The presence of a high-profile international figure in internal spaces can threaten existing alliances. If one faction supports change while another resists, a visitor like Meghan can become a catalyst for conflict. The concerns were also strategic. Meghan's global voice could shape perceptions abroad. Any misinterpretation could affect trade, investment, or diplomatic relations. Leaders who value reputation and stability were unwilling to risk that exposure. The decision, while abrupt, reflected calculated caution. It was also personal. Meghan's reputation as someone who would speak out on private tensions in the past amplified the concern. Her ability to frame narratives internationally made some members of the palace nervous. The fear was that even indirect comments or casual observations could be reported, causing embarrassment or political complications. Further reports indicated that the timing of the dinner and the order to leave was not coincidental. Conservative factions may have allowed her to arrive, believing they could monitor her. Once they assessed the potential influence, they acted decisively. No room for discussion remained. This explanation, while not officially confirmed, offered a clearer picture of the forces at play. It was not simply about etiquette, culture, or a single conversation. It was about power dynamics, perception, and control. Questions remain. Was Meghan asked to leave because she was genuinely seen as a threat? Or did someone inside the palace seize the opportunity to assert authority? Did her departure reflect concern for stability, or was it about removing a challenge to entrenched influence? The decision sent a clear signal. High-profile visitors, even those focused on culture and charity, must navigate layers of authority. What does the future hold for Meghan now? Let's find out. A world that demanded answers. The morning after the sudden order, Meghan Markle was back in her private quarters, facing a reality she had not expected. Saudi Arabia, a country she had hoped to support with her cultural and charitable work, had suddenly closed its doors. The world outside remained unaware of the full details, but for her, the questions were immediate and pressing. What would happen now? How would this abrupt departure affect her plans, her work, and the influence she had carefully built over years? For weeks, she had prepared for this visit. Discussions had been arranged on art, women's empowerment, and charitable programs. Partnerships with local organizations had been considered. Every step of the trip had been planned to create bridges and highlight causes she cared deeply about. But in the quiet hours of the night, everything changed. One private meeting, one perceived misstep, or one wrong impression had altered the path she had set for herself. Meghan had always been seen as someone who spoke her truth, even in difficult situations. She had addressed mental health, gender equality, and transparency within institutions. Those qualities made her admired worldwide, yet, in Riyadh, they may have been seen differently. Some officials reportedly worried that her influence, even if subtle, could shape perceptions in ways they could not control. That concern may have fueled the abrupt decision to remove her. Now, back in London, Meghan had to reconsider her next steps. Would she be able to continue her work internationally? Could she maintain influence in regions where her presence was suddenly unwelcome? The challenges were more than logistical, they were personal. Every initiative she had hoped to pursue was now clouded by uncertainty. Every partnership she had envisioned had to be re-evaluated. Her mind also turned to the long-term consequences. Could this incident affect her ability to work in other countries? Would governments and organizations hesitate to collaborate with her in the future, fearing political complications? The ripple effect of a single decision in Riyadh could shape the trajectory of her career and influence for years to come. Beyond her work, Meghan considered her role as a public figure. She had long balanced private life with global advocacy. Now, the balance seemed fragile. She had to think strategically about where to focus her energy. Which causes could she still pursue safely? How could she continue to speak up for issues she cared about without triggering resistance or conflict? The personal impact was also significant. Decisions made behind palace walls reminded her that power and authority often operate in ways the public cannot see. She had experienced scrutiny in the past, but this sudden removal highlighted the fragile line between opportunity and risk. Every visit, every meeting, every conversation could carry consequences far beyond what was immediately visible. As she reflected, Meghan realized that this experience would change how she approached future engagements. She would have to consider not only the immediate purpose of her visits but also the political and cultural context in which they occurred. Even well-intentioned work could be interpreted in unexpected ways. The stakes were higher than ever, and the path forward required caution, planning, and awareness of forces she could not always control. Yet, there was also determination. Meghan's past showed that setbacks could inspire focus and action. She had built a platform for advocacy, creativity, and cultural exchange. While one visit had ended abruptly, the broader mission remained. The challenge now was navigating a world where influence came with responsibility and risk. She needed to assess carefully how to continue her work, protect her reputation, and maintain her impact without being undermined by unseen forces. The experience also left a lingering question. How much of this was chance, and how much was deliberate? Was she removed because of perceived threats to political authority? Or was it a measure of control, an assertion of power she had not anticipated? The uncertainty amplified the tension and made every future decision more critical. As the sun rose over London, Meghan faced the reality of her next steps. The departure from Saudi Arabia was more than a missed opportunity. It was a lesson in influence, authority, and the complex interplay between intention and perception. The road ahead would require careful planning, but it also offered the chance to shape her work and impact with even greater wisdom. Every choice she made would matter, not only for her own path but for the causes and communities she hoped to support. What do you think about Saudi Arabia's reaction to Meghan's visit? Do you think there are some deeper secrets to their reaction? Share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to like, share, and click the next video shown on your screen.